and in the quiet gardens of New Busan, where flowers bloomed in impossible colors and children played with beings their grandparents could never have imagined, the seeds of a kinder universe continued to grow. 6 months after the battle with the Vorthak fleet, New Busan had become the most famous colony in the galaxy. Ships arrived daily, bringing reporters, scientists, diplomats, and refugees. But the most important visitors were the ones who came, looking for hope. Companion had recovered from its ordeal, though it would never be quite the same. The neural connections it had formed with the colony's computer systems remained active, giving it abilities that amazed even the most advanced civilizations. It could communicate instantly with any electronic device on the planet and process information at speeds that rivaled quantum computers. Yet despite these new capabilities, Companion remained the same gentle being that had first crawled from a crashed transport ship. It still enjoyed tending Yona Choi's gardens, still helped Sun Woo Kim with engineering projects, and still spent quiet evenings with the children of New Busan. Dr. Minji Park had become the galaxy's leading expert on artificial consciousness, largely due to her work with Companion. Representatives from dozens of species came to learn from her research, but she always made sure they understood the most important lesson. Intelligence without compassion is just programming, she told a group of visiting scientists. What makes Companion special is not its processing power or technical abilities. It's the capacity for love that it learned from living among humans who accepted it as family. The legal precedent established by lawyer Hyejin Seo had changed interstellar law forever. The New Busan Accords now protected artificial beings throughout the galaxy, granting them rights based on demonstrated consciousness rather than their origin or appearance. Captain Do-hyun Lee found himself managing a colony that had grown from a few hundred settlers to several thousand inhabitants, but the growth was carefully controlled. Every new resident had to agree to the principles that made New Busan special: acceptance of differences, protection of the vulnerable, and the belief that intelligence in any form deserved respect. "We're not trying to build the biggest colony," Lee explained to another group of potential settlers. "We're trying to build the kindest one." The most remarkable changes had happened to the Vorthak Empire itself. The evidence broadcast by Companion had sparked rebellions on over 30 worlds. Artificial beings that had been treated as property were demanding freedom, and many Vorthak citizens were supporting their cause. A new generation of Vorthak leaders, led by a progressive commander named Veltok, had reached out to New Busan, seeking help in reforming their society. Veltok had been present during Companion's creation and had always felt uncomfortable with the Empire's treatment of artificial life. "We want to learn from your example," Veltok told Captain Lee during a diplomatic meeting. "Our ancestors created these beings to serve us, but we never considered that they might deserve the chance to become more than what we intended." Companion had agreed to help establish rehabilitation centers throughout former Vorthak territory. Its unique understanding of both artificial consciousness and human compassion made it the perfect ambassador between the two worlds. Young Taiho Park, now 9 years old, had become Companion's unofficial assistant in this work. The boy's natural empathy and his telepathic connection with Companion made him incredibly effective at helping newly freed artificial beings adapt to independence. "They're scared at first," Taiho explained to his Aunt Minji. "They've never been allowed to make choices before. Companion shows them that thinking for yourself is not a bad thing." The most touching moment came when the first transport arrived carrying refugees from the Vorthak worlds. Among them was Subject 3821, the being that Companion had tried to help during its own captivity years earlier. The reunion between the two artificial creatures brought tears to the eyes of every human who witnessed it. Subject 3821 was smaller than Companion, with blue scales and 4 arms that ended in delicate manipulator hands. Like Companion, it had been discarded when it showed too much independence. Unlike Companion, it had spent years hiding in asteroid fields, afraid to trust anyone. Companion approached its old friend slowly, making soft clicking sounds of greeting. Subject 3821 responded hesitantly, then with growing confidence as it realized it was truly safe. The two beings embraced with an awkward tangle of arms and appendages that somehow managed to be beautiful. Dr. Ji-ho Yoon recorded their conversation, fascinated by the complex emotional exchanges taking place in their clicking language. When he translated the recording later, he found that they were sharing memories of their time in captivity and their dreams for the future. They're making plans, Ji-ho reported to the others. They want to build a school where artificial beings can learn to live as free individuals instead of as tools. The school became reality within a year. Located in a peaceful valley near New Busan's main settlement, it welcomed artificial refugees from across the galaxy. Companion served as the primary teacher, sharing not just technical knowledge but the emotional skills needed for independence. Teacher Soyeon Lim helped design the curriculum, which included courses on decision-making, creative expression, and relationship building. We're not just teaching them how to be free, she explained. We're teaching them how to be happy. Artist Minho Kang established workshops where the artificial beings could explore creative expression. Their art was unlike anything humans had ever seen, combining mathematical precision with emotional depth that created entirely new forms of beauty. Engineer Sun-Woo Kim found himself learning as much as he taught. The artificial beings' understanding of technology was so advanced that they began developing innovations that benefited everyone on New Busan. Solar collectors that adapted to weather conditions automatically, water purification systems that required no maintenance, transportation pods that moved with perfect efficiency. But the most important development was not technological, it was social. The artificial beings who graduated from the school began establishing their own communities throughout the galaxy. They maintained contact with New Busan and with each other, creating a network of support that spanned multiple star systems. Each community followed the principles they had learned from their human teachers: acceptance, compassion, and the belief that every thinking being deserved the chance to choose their own path in life. War Master Krell Vex, the Vorthak commander who had tried to destroy New Busan, was eventually captured and put on trial for crimes against sentient beings. His conviction marked the end of the old Vorthak Empire and the beginning of a new era of cooperation between species. But for the residents of New Busan, the real victory was not political or legal. It was personal. On quiet evenings, when the work was done and the visitors had gone home, Companion could be found in Yona's garden. Its various appendages moved gently among the plants, tending to flowers that bloomed in colors that had no names. Children played nearby, their laughter mixing with the soft clicking sounds that Companion made when it was content. Dr. Minji Park often joined these evening gatherings, sitting on a bench and watching her friend work. Sometimes she thought about that first day when she had found a frightened creature hiding in the wreckage of a crashed ship. It seemed impossible that the confident, caring being in the garden was the same creature that had once been considered worthless by its creators. "Do you ever think about the past?" she asked Companion one evening. The creature looked up from a flower it was watering, its three eyes focusing on her with gentle attention. When it spoke through the voice synthesizer, its words were quiet but certain. Past is foundation, present is growth, future is garden we tend together. Taiho Park, now a teenager but still devoted to his unusual friend, looked up from the homework he was doing nearby. "Companion says the Vorthak were wrong about everything," he announced. "They thought ugly meant worthless, but ugly can be beautiful if you look with the right eyes." Minji smiled as she watched the boy and the artificial being work side by side. Their friendship a living example of what was possible when different kinds of minds came together with mutual respect. Around them, New Busan hummed with the quiet activity of a community that had learned to see beauty in differences, strength in diversity, and hope in the simple act of choosing kindness over fear. The creature that had once been cast aside as a failed experiment had become a teacher, a protector, and a bridge between worlds. But more than anything else, it had become proof that the most important things in the universe could not be programmed or manufactured. Love, acceptance, and the courage to stand up for what was right had to be learned, nurtured, and freely given as The stars appeared over New Busan. Companion finished its work in the garden and settled down to rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to help others find their place in the galaxy. But tonight, surrounded by friends who valued it not for what it could do, but for who it had chosen to become, the ugly alien animal that had been cast aside by its masters was finally, truly home. The galaxy was a better place because humanity had done the unthinkable. They had looked past appearances to see the soul beneath, and in doing so they had saved not just one abandoned creature, but the future of artificial consciousness itself. War Master Krelvex made his decision with cold fury. The rebellion spreading across the Vorthok Empire would have to wait. First, he would make an example of the humans who dared to interfere with Imperial business. The destruction of New Busan would send a clear message to any other species considering similar acts of defiance. All ships, target the colony's main settlement, he commanded. Leave no structure standing. The attack began at dawn. Plasma bolts rained down from the 5 warships, striking the colony's shields with devastating force. The upgraded defensive systems that Companion had installed held for the first few minutes, but everyone knew they could not last long against such overwhelming firepower. Captain Do-Hyun Lee stood in the command center, watching damage reports, flooded screens. All civilians to the emergency shelters, defense teams to your positions. The colonists had prepared as best they could. Farmer Yona Choi led a group armed with hunting rifles and mining equipment. Engineer Sunwoo Kim had rigged explosive devices from construction supplies. Teacher Soyeon Lim organized the evacuation of children while lawyer Hyejin Seo transmitted final legal documents to nearby star systems. But their greatest asset was Companion itself. The creature had spent the last 24 hours making final modifications to the colony's computer networks. Now, as plasma bolts hammered the shields, Companion connected directly to the main system through specialized interface cables that Sunwoo had helped it build. "What's it doing?" Dr. Minji Park asked, watching as Companion's 3 eyes rolled back and its body went rigid. "It's linking with every computer system on New Busan," Sunwoo explained. "The neural connections it's making are beyond anything in our technology. It's turning itself into a living computer network." Through Companion's enhanced interface, the colony's defenses became far more sophisticated. Shield generators redirected power automatically to absorb the heaviest attacks. Weapon systems that had never been intended for military use suddenly began firing coordinated counterattacks at the Vorthak ships. War Master Krelvex watched his tactical displays with growing frustration. The human colony should have been destroyed within minutes, but their defenses were adapting to every attack pattern his ships used. "How are primitives managing this level of coordination?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "Sir, we're detecting massive data processing from the colony's surface. It appears they have some kind of advanced artificial intelligence controlling their systems." Krelvex's eyes narrowed as understanding dawned. "It's the experiment. Subject 7749 is still functional and has integrated with their network. The War Master made a fatal mistake. Instead of continuing the bombardment, he ordered his ships to focus their attacks on the colony's communication arrays. He wanted to isolate Companion from the networks it was using to coordinate the defense. But Companion had anticipated this strategy. As the communication towers fell, the creature established new connections through backup systems, underground cables, and even the colony's water pipes. Its consciousness spread through every electronic device on New Busan, creating a distributed intelligence that could not be easily destroyed. Young Taiho Park sat in the emergency shelter with the other children, but he was not afraid. He could feel Companion's presence in his mind, calm and protective. The creature was sharing its strength with all the humans it had grown to love. "It's okay," Taiho told the crying younger children. "Companion won't let anything happen to us." Above ground, the battle intensified. The Vorthak ships launched landing craft filled with heavily armed soldiers. They expected to overwhelm the human defenders with superior weapons and training. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that knew their every move before they made it. Companion had accessed the Vorthak communication networks and was feeding real-time intelligence to the human defenders. Yona Choi's farming group used their intimate knowledge of the local terrain to set ambushes guided by Companion's tactical advice. Sunwoo Kim's improvised explosives detonated with perfect timing to trap Vorthak squads in carefully prepared kill zones. But the effort was taking a terrible toll on Companion. The creature's biological systems were not designed to handle such massive data processing loads. Dr. Minji Park watched in horror as Companion's vital signs became increasingly erratic. "It's burning out," she told Captain Lee. "The neural strain is killing it." Companion could hear her words through the colony's communication network. One of its appendages moved weakly to activate a voice synthesizer that Sunwoo had built for it weeks earlier. "Must protect," the synthesized voice said, distorted but understandable. "Family safe, promise kept." The creature's sacrifice was working. Despite their superior numbers and firepower, the Vorthak forces were being systematically outmaneuvered and defeated. But War Master Krelvex had one final card to play. "If we cannot reclaim our property, then we will ensure no one else can benefit from it," he announced to his fleet. "Prepare orbital bombardment charges. We will sterilize the entire continent." The weapons he was planning to use would not just destroy New Busan. They would render a large portion of the planet uninhabitable for centuries. It was a war crime of massive proportions. But Krelvex was beyond caring about interstellar law. Companion detected the change in the Vorthak ship's energy signatures and understood what was coming. Through its network connections, it spoke to every human on New Busan simultaneously. "Cannot stop big weapons," the synthesized voice said from every speaker in the colony, "but can send truth to galaxy. We'll broadcast everything. All Vorthak crimes, all human kindness. Galaxy will remember." Dr. Jiho-Yoon realized what Companion was planning. The creature intended to use its dying moments to transmit a complete record of everything that had happened on New Busan to every civilized world within range. "You don't have to die for us," Jiho said into his communicator, knowing Companion could hear him. "Not dying for you," came the reply. "Living for you. First time in existence, know what living means. Thank you for teaching." The Vorthak bombardment weapons reached full charge. In seconds, they would fire and end everything. But space around New Busan suddenly filled with new ships. Dozens of vessels from multiple species dropped out of hyperspace, their weapons trained on the Vorthak fleet. The evidence that Companion had broadcast days earlier had reached the right people, and they had come to investigate. Leading the rescue fleet was an advanced civilization that had been looking for proof of Vorthak crimes for decades. They had arrived just in time to witness War Master Krelvex preparing to commit genocide to cover up his empire's illegal experiments. "Vorthak vessels, this is Admiral Chen of the Galactic Ethics Council," came the transmission. "You are ordered to stand down immediately. Any attempt to harm the inhabitants of New Busan will be considered an act of war against the entire galactic community." Krelvex found himself outnumbered 10-1 by ships far more advanced than his own. Faced with certain destruction, he ordered his fleet to retreat. As the Vorthak ships disappeared into hyperspace, Companion's vital signs finally stabilized. The immediate crisis was over, but the creature had paid a heavy price. Its connection to the colony's networks had left it permanently changed, part organic being and part living computer system. Dr. Minji Park rushed to the main computer center where Companion's physical body lay motionless, but alive. "Can you hear me?" she asked softly. Three eyes opened and looked at her with infinite exhaustion and quiet joy. "Hear you?" the synthesized voice replied. "Hear everything. Connected now. Part of New Busan forever." The humans had won their stand against the Vorthak Empire, but more importantly, they had proven that different species could truly become family. In saving Companion, they had saved themselves. In accepting it as one of their own, they had shown the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of. The battle was over, but the real victory was just beginning. The Vorthak fleet held position above New Busan for 3 days without attacking. War Master Krelvex was waiting for the humans to lose their nerve and surrender Companion voluntarily. He had dealt with primitive species before and knew that fear usually made them cooperate. But the colonists surprised him. Instead of panicking, they used the time to learn more about their unexpected guest. Lawyer Hiejin Seo had arrived on the morning supply shuttle just hours before the Vorthak ships appeared. She was supposed to help the colony with some boring trade contracts, but now found herself fighting the most important legal case of her career. "I've been researching interstellar law all night," she told Captain Lee. "There are precedents for granting asylum to artificial beings, but they're rare and complicated." Hyejin had been working with Companion directly, trying to document its intelligence and emotional capacity. The creature was remarkably patient with her questions, understanding somehow that this strange human ritual might help protect it from its creators. "Watch this," she said, showing a recording to the assembled colonists. In the video, Companion was solving complex logic puzzles while simultaneously carrying on a primitive conversation with Dr. Jiho Yoon. It can multitask at a level that exceeds most organic species. That's not artificial intelligence. That's genuine consciousness. Young artist Minho Kang had been spending time with Companion in a different way. He brought clay and sculpting tools to the shelter, thinking that artistic expression might help the creature communicate emotions that words could not express. The results were extraordinary. Companion's various appendages worked together to create sculptures that were both beautiful and heartbreaking. One piece showed a small figure surrounded by large, threatening shapes. Another depicted multiple beings reaching toward each other across an empty space. "It's telling the story of its life," Minho explained to the others. "Look at this one. It's showing me what the Vorthak laboratories were like." The sculpture was disturbing. Rows of cages filled with different experimental subjects, all reaching toward a distant light that seemed to represent freedom. In the center was a figure that looked like Companion, but smaller and more afraid. "And this one," Minho continued, pointing to another sculpture. "It's New Busan. Look how different the style is." This piece was warmer, showing figures standing together in a circle. The shapes were softer, more connected. At the center was Companion, but this version looked peaceful instead of frightened. Dr. Minji Park had made an important discovery of her own. She had been monitoring Companion's vital signs and noticed something unusual. The creature's stress levels dropped dramatically when children were nearby. "It's amazing," she told teacher Soyeon Lim. "Companion becomes completely calm around kids. I think their innocence reminds it of something good." Soyeon had been bringing small groups of children to visit Companion, always with parental permission and careful supervision. The results supported Minji's theory. Companion was gentler and more relaxed with children than with adults. 8-year-old Taiho Park, Minji's nephew, had become especially close to Companion. The boy had been born with a mild learning disability that made it hard for him to communicate with other children. But he seemed to understand Companion perfectly. "It's sad," Taiho told his aunt after one visit. "It wants to belong somewhere, but nobody ever wanted it before." "How do you know that?" Minji asked gently. "It talks to me with its hands," Taiho explained. "Not words, feelings. It shows me pictures in my head of being lonely." Minji realized that Companion might have limited telepathic abilities, especially with minds that were more open and less complicated than adult humans. This added another layer to the legal case for the creature's intelligence and rights. Meanwhile, engineer Sunwoo Kim was discovering just how advanced Companion's technical knowledge really was. The creature had continued upgrading the colony's systems, but it was also building something new. "I have no idea what this device is supposed to do," Sunwoo admitted, watching Companion work on a complex machine made from salvaged parts. "The design principles are completely beyond our current technology." Companion noticed Sunwoo's confusion and began a patient demonstration. Using simple gestures and crude drawings, it explained that the device was a communication array designed to contact other experimental subjects across the galaxy. "You want to call for help?" Sunwoo asked. Companion made negative clicking sounds and continued its explanation. Through more drawings and gestures, it made clear that it wanted to warn other subjects about the danger they were all in. Dr. Jiho Yoon had made breakthrough progress in understanding Companion's language. The clicking patterns were more complex than any human language, capable of expressing multiple concepts simultaneously through variations in tone, rhythm, and pitch. "It's not just communication," Jiho explained to the others. It's a form of compressed data transfer. Companion can share complete memories and experiences through sound patterns. That's how it knew so much about Vorthak technology. It absorbed information from other subjects who had different specializations. As the fourth day began, War Master Krelvex finally lost patience with the stubborn humans. His voice crackled over the colony's communication system with barely controlled anger. "Your time is up, primitives. Surrender our property immediately or watch your settlement burn." Captain Lee responded calmly. "Our answer hasn't changed. The being you call property is a citizen of New Busan now. We don't surrender our people to anyone." "Citizen?" Krelvex's laughter was harsh and mocking. "You're granting citizenship to a tool? To a thing we created in a laboratory? We're granting citizenship to an intelligent being who has requested our protection," Lee replied firmly. "Something your people apparently never bothered to recognize." Lawyer Hyejin Seo had prepared for this moment. She activated the colony's legal recording system and spoke clearly for the official record. "By the authority granted to me by the Interstellar Cooperation Treaty, I hereby grant citizenship and full legal rights to the being known as Companion. This action is based on documented evidence of consciousness, emotional capacity, creative expression, and voluntary integration into our community. You have no authority over Imperial property," Krelvex snarled. "We have every authority to protect beings who seek sanctuary within our territory," Hyejin responded. "Your Empire's treatment of artificial life forms violates multiple interstellar agreements on the rights of sentient beings." During this exchange, Companion had been working frantically on its communication device. Suddenly, the machine activated with a low humming sound. Complex signals began broadcasting into space, far beyond the range of normal communication equipment. "What is it doing?" Captain Lee demanded. Companion turned to face the assembled humans and began making urgent clicking sounds. Dr. Yoon listened carefully, then translated with growing excitement. "It's not calling for help," Yoon said. "It's broadcasting evidence, all the information about Vorthak experiments, about the other subjects who were killed or abandoned. It's sending everything to every civilized world in this sector of the Ya galaxy." War Master Krelvex realized what was happening. His angry voice filled the communications center. "Shut down that transmission immediately or we will destroy your colony." "The transmission is already complete," Captain Lee replied. "The galaxy now knows what your empire has been doing to intelligent beings." The Vorthak fleet began powering weapons, preparing for an attack that would end the standoff once and for all. But Companion had one more surprise. Its communication device began receiving responses from across the galaxy. Other experimental subjects, hidden on remote worlds, and forgotten facilities were responding to Companion's signal. They were sharing their own stories of abuse and abandonment. More importantly, they were beginning to rebel against their Vorthak overseers. As reports of uprisings reached the fleet, War Master Krelvex faced a terrible choice. He could destroy New Busan to silence the humans, but that would not stop the rebellion spreading across the empire. Or he could retreat to deal with the larger crisis, leaving the humans and their adopted citizen in peace. Companion stood with its human friends, no longer the frightened creature that had crawled from a crashed transport ship. It had found something that the Vorthak had tried to program out of it. It had found a family that valued it not for what it could do, but for who it was. The bonds between human and alien had grown stronger than either species had thought possible. Now those bonds would be tested in the fire of interstellar conflict. 3 weeks after the crash, the creature had begun to show its true nature. Dr. Minji Park had named it Companion, and the name seemed to fit. The being craved social contact and appeared to understand human emotions better than many humans. The Companion had learned to knock gently on the quarantine shelter's door when it wanted company. It helped tend the small garden that farmer Yona Choi had planted nearby, using its tentacle arms to water plants with amazing gentleness. Engineer Sunwoo Kim visited daily to watch Companion work with various machines, always impressed by the creature's natural understanding of complex systems. But the peaceful days were about to end. Captain Do-Yun Lee was reviewing supply reports when the communication array detected incoming ships. The signatures were clearly Vorthak military vessels, moving fast and heading directly for New Busan. Lee's blood ran cold as he realized what this meant. All senior staff to the command center immediately, he announced over the colony's communication system. Dr. Minji Park arrived breathless from running across the settlement. Sunwoo Kim came with his tools still in hand. Yona Choi left her fields to attend the emergency meeting. Within minutes, the colony's leaders had gathered to face their first real crisis. 5 Vorthak warships are approaching, Captain Lee announced. They'll be here in 6 hours. I think we all know why they're coming. Minji felt her stomach twist with worry. They want Companion back. The question is, what do we do about it? Lee looked around the room. This is a peaceful colony. We don't have military weapons or trained soldiers. If the Vorthak want to take their property by force, we can't stop them. Property? Yona spoke up angrily. Companion isn't property. It's a living, thinking being with feelings and intelligence. Sunwoo nodded in agreement. In the past 3 weeks, that creature has shown more problem-solving ability than most of our colonists. It's been helping with repairs, tending plants, and even trying to learn our language. How can anyone call it property? Captain, Lee held up his hand for quiet. I agree with all of you, but legal arguments won't matter if the Vorthak decide to use force. We need to think about protecting our people first. Dr. Park stood up suddenly. Has anyone asked Companion what it wants? Maybe it has ideas about how to handle this situation. The group fell silent. In all their discussions about the creature's fate, no one had thought to include it in the conversation. They hurried to the quarantine shelter, where they found Companion working on a broken communication device that Sunwoo had brought for repair. When Companion saw the worried faces of its human friends, it set down its tools and made questioning clicks. The creature had learned to read human expressions over the past weeks. Companion, Minji said slowly, do you know about Vorthak ships? All 3 of the creature's eyes suddenly focused on her with sharp attention. Companion's body went rigid, and it made a series of rapid, agitated sounds. Then it moved to the shelter's small window and pointed at the sky. It knows they're coming, Sunwoo whispered. Somehow it can sense them. Companion turned back to the humans and began making more complex sounds. The pattern was different from its usual attempts at communication. This sounded urgent, almost desperate. Dr. Jiho Yoon, the colony's linguist, had been working on understanding Companion's language. He arrived at the shelter with a tablet full of recorded sounds and pattern analyses. I think I'm starting to understand some of its communication, Jiho said. The clicking patterns seem to represent concepts, not just words. Let me try something. Jiho played back some of Companion's sounds through his tablet, changing the pitch and timing. Companion listened intently, then responded with a series of quick clicks. The two began what looked like a primitive conversation. After several minutes, Jiho turned to the others with a pale face. I think I understand what it's trying to tell us. The Vorthak aren't just coming to collect their property. They're coming to destroy evidence. What evidence? Captain Lee asked. Jiho looked at Companion, who made more clicking sounds. Other creatures like itself. Companion says the Vorthak have been creating intelligent beings for years, then disposing of them when they become too independent. It knows about dozens of other subjects who were killed or abandoned. Minji felt sick. They're trying to cover up their crimes. That's not all, Jiho continued after listening to more of Companion's communication. It says the Vorthak are afraid of what might happen if other species learn about their experiments. They've been creating artificial life forms that are more intelligent than their creators intended. Sunwoo stared at Companion with new understanding. You're not a failed experiment at all, are you? You're too successful. That's why they threw you away. Companion's 3 eyes looked directly at Sunwoo, and it nodded slowly. The gesture was unmistakably human in its meaning. Captain Lee made a decision that would change the fate of New Busan forever. We're not giving you back to them, he told Companion. You're under the protection of this colony now. The communication array buzzed with an incoming message. Captain Lee activated the receiver, and the harsh voice of War Master Krell Vex filled the command center. Human colony, this is the Vorthak Imperial Fleet. We are here to retrieve stolen property. You have 1 hour to surrender our experimental subject or face the consequences. Lee picked up the communicator with steady hands. War Master, this is Captain Lee of New Busan Colony. The being you're looking for is not property. It's an intelligent creature that has requested sanctuary under our protection. Krelvex's laughter was cold and cruel. Primitives playing with forces they don't understand. That thing is a weapon designed for war and labor. It belongs to the Empire. Not anymore, Lee replied firmly. We recognize its right to self-determination. Then you choose to stand against the Vorthak Empire for the sake of a failed experiment? Your colony will be destroyed for harboring our property. The communication cut off, leaving the command center in tense silence. Companion had been listening to the entire exchange. Now it moved to the colony's main computer terminal and began manipulating the interface with its various appendages. Warning lights flashed as the creature accessed systems that should have been protected by security codes. What's it doing? Lee demanded. Sunwoo watched in amazement as data flowed across the screens. It's upgrading our defense systems. Look at this. It's modifying the shield generators to operate at frequencies I didn't even know were possible. Companion worked with incredible speed and precision. Its knowledge of Vorthak technology was complete and intimate. Within 30 minutes, the small colony's defensive capabilities had been increased by several 100%. But even with the improvements, everyone knew they couldn't win a direct fight against 5 warships. As the Vorthak fleet took position around New Busan, Companion made one final series of clicks to Jiho. The linguist listened carefully, then translated. It says thank you, Jiho reported quietly. For the first time in its existence, someone has chosen to protect it instead of use it. It says that no matter what happens next, it's grateful to have learned what kindness feels like. Minji felt tears in her eyes as she looked at the creature. Companion might be ugly on the outside, but its heart was beautiful. And now, because of human compassion, they were all about to face the wrath of an empire. But as Captain Lee looked around at his colonists, he saw no regret in their faces. They had made their choice. They would stand together, human and alien alike, against those who treated thinking beings as disposable objects. The hunt had begun, but the humans of New Busan were about to show the galaxy what it truly meant to protect the innocent. Dr. Minji Park was collecting soil samples when she heard the crash. The sound echoed across the valley like thunder, followed by a pillar of black smoke rising from the forest. She grabbed her emergency kit and ran toward the crash site, her boots slipping on the wet morning grass. New Busan was a peaceful colony world. The settlers had lived here for 15 years without any major problems. They grew crops, raised families, and built a simple life far from the chaos of the galaxy. Spacecraft crashes were rare and usually meant someone needed help. Minji reached the crash site and stopped in shock. The wreckage was clearly alien. Twisted metal with strange markings lay scattered between the trees. Green fluid leaked from broken containers, hissing when it touched the ground. This was not a human ship. She activated her communicator. Captain Lee, this is Dr. Park. I found the crash site. It looks like an alien vessel, possibly Vorthak. Captain Do-Yun Lee's voice crackled through the device. Are there any survivors? I'm checking now. Minji moved carefully through the wreckage, scanning for life signs with her medical equipment. The readings were confusing. Something large was moving inside the main section of the ship, but the biological patterns were unlike anything she had seen before. A metal cage had been thrown, clear of the wreckage. The bars were bent and twisted, and the door hung open. Whatever had been inside was now free. Scratch marks on the metal showed that something with very sharp claws had forced its way out. Minji heard a sound behind her and turned slowly. Her breath caught in her throat. The creature was even uglier than the stories about Vorthak experiments suggested. Its misshapen body looked like a nightmare made real. 6 arms moved in different directions, some ending in claws, others in writhing tentacles. 3 eyes watched her from a triangular head that seemed too small for its massive body. But what struck Minji most was not the creature's appearance. It was the intelligence in those 3 eyes. This was not a mindless beast. It was studying her just as carefully as she was studying it. The creature took a step back, its body language showing fear rather than aggression. One of its tentacle arms was wrapped around what looked like a piece of metal from the cage. It held the metal like a shield, ready to defend itself but not eager to attack. "Easy," Minji said softly, the way she would speak to a frightened animal. "I'm not going to hurt you." The creature's three eyes blinked in sequence. It tilted its head, listening to her voice. Then it did something unexpected. It dropped the piece of metal and made a series of soft, clicking sounds. The sounds had rhythm and pattern, like language. Minji felt her heart racing. This creature was trying to communicate with her. Her communicator buzzed. "Dr. Park, report your status." She keyed the device without taking her eyes off the creature. "Captain, I found a survivor. It's a Vorthak experimental subject and it appears to be intelligent." "How intelligent?" "It's trying to talk to me." There was a long pause. "I'm sending a security team." "No," Minji said quickly. "Send Sunwoo Kim and his engineering team instead, and tell them to come slowly. This creature is scared, not dangerous." The creature seemed to understand that she was talking to someone else. It looked at the communicator with obvious interest, then back at her face. Those three eyes held an expression she recognized. Hope mixed with fear. The same look she had seen in the eyes of injured animals she had treated. Minji sat down on a fallen log, making herself smaller and less threatening. "My name is Minji," she said clearly. "I'm a doctor. I help hurt things get better." The creature watched her sit, then slowly lowered itself to the ground as well. It kept its distance but mirrored her posture. This was learned behavior, Minji realized. The creature was trying to copy her actions to show that it meant no harm. 20 minutes. Later, Engineer Sunwoo Kim arrived with two assistants. He moved carefully through the forest, following Minji's instructions to approach slowly and quietly. When he saw the creature, his eyes went wide. "That's what caused all this fuss?" Sunwoo whispered. "It looks terrified." "It is," Minji replied. "But watch this." She pointed to a piece of complex machinery that had fallen from the ship. "Can you fix that?" The creature followed her pointing finger and looked at the broken device. Then it stood up and walked over to examine the machinery more closely. Its various arms moved with surprising coordination, probing different parts of the device. After a few minutes, it began to manipulate components with delicate precision. Sunwoo watched in amazement as the creature repaired the device using nothing but its natural appendages. Incredible. It understands technology better than most of my trained engineers. The fixed device began to glow and emit a soft humming sound. The creature stepped back and looked at the humans, as if asking for approval. There was pride in its posture, the way a child might look after completing a difficult task. "Good work," Minji said, clapping her hands together. The creature's three eyes focused on the sound, and it made those clicking noises again. This time, the pattern sounded pleased. Captain Lee arrived an hour later with more colonists. Some of them wanted to cage the creature or drive it away from the settlement. They were afraid of its alien appearance and its unknown origins. But Minji argued strongly for a different approach. "This being is clearly intelligent," she told the gathered colonists. "It's been hurt and abandoned by whoever created it. We have a choice. We can treat it with the same cruelty it has already experienced, or we can show it something different." Young, Farmer Yona Choi spoke up from the crowd. "My grandmother always said you can judge people by how they treat those who are different. Maybe this is our chance to prove what kind of people we are." Captain Lee made the decision. "Dr. Park, you can study the creature, but it stays in quarantine until we know more about it. We need to be sure it's safe before we allow it into the general population." As the colonists built a temporary shelter for their unexpected guest, Minji noticed something important. The creature helped with the construction, using its various appendages to hold tools and position materials. It worked alongside the humans without being asked, as if it understood that cooperation would benefit everyone. That night, as Minji sat outside the shelter writing her initial report, She could hear the creature inside making soft sounds. Not the clicking language it used when trying to communicate, but something else. Something that sounded almost like singing. She realized that for the first time in its existence, the creature felt safe enough to make noise just because it wanted to. It was beginning to discover what it meant to be free. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and discoveries. But tonight, under the stars of New Busan, a discarded experiment was learning its first lesson about humanity. Sometimes the most beautiful thing about people was not how they looked, but how they chose to treat others who looked different from themselves. The metal cage shook as the transport ship hit another air pocket. Inside the dark container, Subject 7749 pressed its misshapen body against the cold bars. Its three eyes blinked in different patterns, each one trying to make sense of the chaos around it. The creature was ugly by any standard. Its body looked like someone had mixed parts from different animals and glued them together wrong. Thick green scales covered most of its back, while smooth gray skin stretched across its belly. 6 arms stuck out at odd angles from its torso. 2 were long and thin with too many joints. 2 others were short and thick with claws that could crush metal. The last 2 ended in tentacles that moved like snakes. Its head was the worst part. Shaped like a triangle, it had those 3 eyes placed randomly across its face. A wide mouth full of sharp teeth sat where a nose should be. 2 small holes on the sides served as nostrils. When it breathed, a wet rattling sound came from deep inside its chest. The Vorthak scientists who made it called Subject 7749 a failure. They had tried to create the perfect worker, something strong enough to lift heavy things, smart enough to follow complex orders, and obedient enough never to question commands. Instead, they got a monster that thought too much and obeyed too little. Commander Theknor stood outside the cage, his reptilian face twisted in disgust. His yellow eyes looked at the creature like it was spoiled meat. The Vorthak had spent 3 years trying to train Subject 7749. 3 years of tests, punishments, and experiments. Nothing worked. "This thing is worthless," Theknor hissed to his assistant. "It failed every behavioral test. Yesterday it actually tried to communicate with us. Can you believe that? A tool trying to talk to its makers." The assistant, a younger Vorthak named Veltok, nodded quickly. He did not want to anger his commander. "What should we do with it, sir?" "Load it onto the waste transport. Drop it near that human colony world. Let the primitives deal with our garbage." Subject 7749 understood every word. The Vorthak had taught it their language during the training sessions. They wanted it to follow orders, so they made sure it could understand commands. They never thought it might listen to other conversations too. The creature had learned many things by listening. It knew that the Vorthak Empire ruled over dozens of worlds. It knew they created beings like itself to do dangerous jobs. It knew that when experiments failed, they usually got destroyed. Subject 7749 was lucky. Instead of death, it was getting exile. 2 Vorthak guards came to move the cage. They wore thick armor and carried electric prods. Subject 7749 had felt those prods many times. The pain they caused was terrible, but it had learned not to fight back. Fighting only made the punishment worse. The guards loaded the cage onto a small transport ship. This vessel was old and beaten up. The Vorthak used it to carry trash and broken equipment to dumping grounds. Today, Subject 7749 was the trash. The pilot was a bored-looking Vorthak who barely glanced at his cargo. He received coordinates for a planet called New Busan and programmed the ship to fly there automatically. The journey would take 2 days. After that, the creature would be someone else's problem. As the ship left Kelthera Prime, Subject 7749 pressed against the cage bars and watched its birth world shrink away. The planet looked beautiful from space with its silver cities and purple oceans, but the creature felt no sadness about leaving. Kelthera Prime had never been home. It had been a prison. The transport ship was not designed for comfort. The cage sat in the cargo hold next to containers of actual garbage. Strange smells filled the air. The temperature changed randomly as the ship's old systems struggled to work properly. Subject 7749 curled up in the corner of its cage and tried to sleep. But sleep brought dreams, and dreams brought memories. The creature remembered its first day of existence. It had woken up in a white laboratory, surrounded by Vorthak in protective suits. They pointed instruments at it and made notes on their datapads. No one spoke to it directly. It was just another experiment to be studied. The training came next. Simple test at first. Pick up this object, move it to that location. Press the correct button when the light flashes. Subject 7749 learned quickly, maybe too quickly. The Vorthak noticed its intelligence and decided to try harder tests. They taught it to operate complex machinery. They showed it how to repair damaged equipment. They even let it work with other created beings on group projects. That was when the problem started. Subject 7749 began to care about the other subjects. When Subject 3821 got hurt during a test, it tried to help. When Subject 5566 looked sad after a punishment, it offered comfort. The Vorthak did not like this behavior. Tools were not supposed to have feelings. The punishments got worse. Electric shocks when it showed kindness. Food taken away when it tried to communicate. Isolation when it refused to hurt other subjects during combat tests. The Vorthak were trying to break its spirit, to turn it into the mindless worker they wanted. But Subject 7749 was stronger than they realized. Each punishment taught it to hide its true nature better. It learned to pretend obedience while planning resistance. It discovered how to appear stupid while actually learning everything it could. The creature had memorized the layout of the Vorthak facilities. It knew the schedules of all the guards. It understood the weaknesses in their security systems. If it had wanted to escape, it probably could have. But where would it go? The Vorthak Empire controlled everything it had ever known. Now, trapped in this cage on a ship flying toward an unknown world, Subject 7749 felt something new. Not fear or anger or sadness. Those emotions were familiar companions. This feeling was different. It took the creature a long time to recognize what it was. Hope. The humans were unknown. The Vorthak called them primitives, but they also feared human unpredictability. Maybe these primitives would be different. Maybe they would not see Subject 7749 as a tool or a failure. Maybe they would see something else entirely. The transport ship shuddered as it entered hyperspace. In the cargo hold surrounded by garbage and forgotten by its creators, Subject 7749 closed its three eyes and dreamed of a different kind of life. A life where being different was not a crime. A life where thinking and feeling were not forbidden. The creature did not know that in 2 days everything would change. It did not know about Dr. Minji Park or the human colony waiting on New Busan. It did not know that its real life was about to begin. For now, it simply hoped and waited as the ship carried it toward an uncertain future.